5 smart replies that shut anyone up. Stoicism, Stoic wisdom. If you are new here, welcome. And if you have been watching for a while, you already know what this channel is about. We don't do surface-level content. We go deep into Stoic philosophy and pull out the tools, the mindset, and the wisdom that actually change how you move through the world. If that is what you are looking for, hit subscribe right now and join this growing community. Every video we release is built to sharpen you. Now, let's get into this. Introduction. The power of the right word at the right moment. There is a specific kind of power that most people never develop, and it has nothing to do with physical strength, wealth, or status. It is the power of knowing exactly what to say when someone is trying to provoke you, manipulate you, belittle you, or drag you into a conflict that serves no one. It is the power of the perfectly chosen response, calm, precise, and utterly disarming. Most people, when confronted, do one of two things. They either explode, firing back with emotion, saying things they regret, handing their opponent exactly the reaction they were looking for, or they collapse, going silent out of shock, swallowing their dignity, walking away feeling diminished and wishing they had said something. Neither response serves you. Neither response is Stoic. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, and the long tradition of philosophers they represent, were deeply interested in the art of speech. Not eloquence for its own sake, but precision in communication as a form of self-mastery. They understood that how you respond to provocation reveals who you are. And more importantly, they understood that the right response could shut down an attack not with aggression, but with something far more powerful: clarity, composure, and truth. In this video, we are going to explore 5 Stoic-rooted smart replies, not cheap comebacks, not rehearsed insults, but genuine, philosophically grounded responses that protect your dignity, expose manipulation, and leave the other person with nothing useful to say. These are not just words. They are strategies. They are weapons of the composed mind. Why the Stoics cared about response, not reaction. Before we get into the 5 replies themselves, we need to understand the philosophical foundation underneath them. Because without that foundation, these responses are just clever lines. With it, they become something you can actually use, reliably, under pressure, in real situations. The Stoic philosophy of communication begins with a single, radical idea: between stimulus and response, there is a gap. And in that gap lives your freedom. Most people have never found that gap. They have been reacting their entire lives, automatically, predictably, emotionally, to whatever comes at them. Someone insults them, they feel hurt and lash out. Someone challenges them, they feel threatened and either attack or retreat. The Stoics called this living at the mercy of your passions, being pushed around by your own emotions like a leaf in the wind, with no stable center, no consistent character, no real power. Epictetus was particularly direct about this. He taught that most human suffering, including most of the suffering that happens in conflict with other people, comes not from what happens to us, but from how we interpret what happens to us. Change the interpretation, and you change the entire dynamic. This is why Stoic responses are not about being clever. They are about being grounded. When you respond from a place of genuine inner stability, when you are not threatened, not reactive, not emotionally hijacked, your words carry a different kind of weight. They land differently. They do not escalate. They do not flatter the provocation with panic. They meet fire not with more fire, but with something that fire cannot consume: stillness. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. The smart replies we are about to explore are applications of that principle. They are what strength sounds like when it is expressed in words. Reply 1. That says more about you than it does about me. This is perhaps the most elegant Stoic response in existence. It is short, it is calm, it is devastatingly accurate, and it requires absolutely no aggression to deliver. Here is why it works on a philosophical level. When someone insults you, criticizes you unfairly, or attempts to diminish you in front of others, they are not actually making a statement about your reality. They are making a statement about their own inner state, their frustrations, their insecurities, their need for control, their desire to elevate themselves by lowering you. The attack tells you almost nothing about who you are. It tells you a great deal about who they are. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the distinction between things that are truly harmful and things that merely feel harmful. Someone's words, however sharp, however public, however intended to wound, cannot actually damage your character. They can damage your reputation temporarily. They can make you feel uncomfortable. But your virtue, your integrity, your actual identity, those are inside the domain of your own will. They are untouchable. When you respond with, "That says more about you than it does about me," you are making that Stoic principle audible. You are demonstrating, not just claiming, that their words have not penetrated your sense of self. You are redirecting the spotlight from your reaction back to their behavior. And you are doing it without hostility, which makes it even more powerful, because hostility would suggest they got to you. Seneca wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." This response embodies that. It does not mirror the aggression. It does not match the energy. It stands above it, composed, accurate, and complete. One important note. For this response to land with its full power, your delivery must match the words. If you say it with shaking hands, raised voice, or visible emotion, the message is undermined. This response only works when you have found the gap between stimulus and response, when you have genuinely processed the moment before you speak. Then, and only then, it is devastating in the most dignified way possible. Reply 2. I don't need to respond to this. This one is radical. In a culture that has convinced us that every attack deserves a counterattack, every challenge demands a defense, and silence equals surrender, this response is an act of philosophical rebellion. Epictetus taught one of the most counterintuitive lessons in the entire Stoic tradition: not everything deserves your engagement. In fact, one of the clearest signs of a person with genuine self-mastery is that they have developed the ability to evaluate, in real time, under pressure, whether something is worth their energy. And most provocations, most insults, most attempts to draw you into conflict, or simply not think about what happens when someone says something designed to provoke you and you simply decline to be provoked. Not passively, not with visible effort, but genuinely and clearly. You look at the situation. You assess it and you say, out loud or internally, I don't need to respond to this. The effect is extraordinary. The person who expected to see you scramble, defend, justify, or explode is left holding their own provocation with nothing to show for it. There is a specific psychological dynamic at play here that the Stoics intuitively understood, even before modern psychology had language for it. Most provocations are designed to generate a reaction. The reaction is the goal. It is what validates the provocateur's power, confirms their narrative about you, and gives them the energy they were looking for. When you deny that reaction, cleanly, calmly, without making a performance of your composure, you deny them everything. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change." But he also understood the difference between genuine critique worth engaging and empty provocation worth nothing. The wisdom to tell the difference, and the strength to act on that difference, is what separates the Stoic from the reactive. Saying, "I don't need to respond to this," is not weakness dressed up as strength. It is strength that has nothing left to prove. We are deep into this now, and the best is still ahead. If this content is giving you a new way to think about how you communicate, how you protect your dignity, and how you use Stoic philosophy in real daily situations, you are in the right place. Subscribe to this channel right now. We put out new Stoic content regularly, and every video is built to make you sharper, calmer, and more powerful in how you navigate the world. Hit subscribe and stay with us now. Let's keep going. Reply 3. I'll take that into consideration. On the surface, this seems mild, almost passive, but used with the right understanding and the right timing, it is one of the most sophisticated responses in the Stoic arsenal, because it is simultaneously honest, non-committal, and completely impenetrable. Here is the situation it is designed for. Someone gives you unsolicited advice. Someone criticizes your choices, your work, your appearance, your lifestyle, things that are squarely within the domain of your own will, your own life, your own sovereignty. They deliver it as if it is obvious, as if you are obligated to receive it, adjust yourself, and thank them for the correction. And they are waiting, consciously or not, for you to either agree, which feeds their sense of authority over you, or to argue, which gives them the conflict they were half hoping for. I'll take that into consideration, does neither. It acknowledges that you have heard them, which is honest. It does not commit you to any particular response or change, which is stoically appropriate, because your choices are yours alone. And it closes the loop cleanly, leaving no thread for them to pull. Epictetus was explicit about this principle. He taught that the only things truly within your control are your own judgments, impulses, desires, and aversion. Everything outside that domain, including the opinions of other people about how you should live, is simply not your concern. Not because other people don't matter, but because you have a life to live, and you cannot live it by committee. The deeper Stoic wisdom in this response is about maintaining your inner citadel, the term Marcus Aurelius used to describe the sovereign space of your own mind. You can let information in, you can evaluate it honestly, with genuine openness. And then you can decide, without external pressure, without social obligation, without the anxiety of needing to justify yourself, what, if anything, to do with it. I'll take that into consideration, is the verbal expression of that citadel. It says, I am open, but I am not conquered. I hear you, but I rule here. Reply 4. Why does that matter to you? This is the reply that turns the table entirely. And it does so not with aggression, but with genuine philosophical curiosity, which, in the right situation, is far more disarming than any counterattack. Most people who involve themselves in your life, your choices, your behavior, or your character without being invited have never been asked this question directly. They have opinions. They voice them. They expect either compliance or resistance, both of which feel like victories in their own way. What they do not expect is to suddenly be the subject of examination. Why does that matter to you? Is a Socratic question in Stoic clothing. Socrates famously used questions not to attack, but to illuminate, to force the person he was speaking with to actually examine what they believed and why. The Stoics adopted this method and applied it to the practical business of navigating social conflict. When someone is in your business, when someone is judging your life, when someone is attacking your choices, the question is not, how do I defend myself? The question is, what is actually driving this person's behavior? Asking the question out loud does something remarkable. It inverts the power dynamic. Suddenly, the person who was on the offense must stop and ask themselves, why do I care? What is this really about? And very often, more often than people would like to admit, they don't have a good answer. Their criticism was impulsive, reflexive, or rooted in something entirely personal to them that has nothing to do with you. Marcus Aurelius was a master of this kind of inquiry. He constantly examined the motivations of those around him, not to judge them, but to understand them. People exist for each other, he wrote. You can instruct or endure them. This response is both at once. It instructs by asking, and it endures by refusing to be drawn into a fight on someone else's terms. Used calmly, without sarcasm, without hostility, this question is one of the most powerful social tools in existence. It communicates that you are not frightened, not defensive, and not oblivious. You are paying attention, and you are asking the question that most people never think to ask. Reply 5. I'm not going to argue about this. This is the reply that ends things. Not with a slam of the door or a raised voice, but with a quiet, absolute finality that leaves no room for escalation. It is the Stoic equivalent of removing your piece from a chessboard that was never worth playing on. Here is the context in which this response is most necessary. There are people, and most of us know at least one, who are not interested in conversation, in understanding, or in resolution. They are interested in argument for its own sake. They push because they enjoy the push. They escalate because conflict is where they feel most alive, most relevant, most powerful. In the language of psychology, they are looking for engagement at any emotional register, including anger, because anger still means they have your attention. The Stoics had a clear philosophical position on this. Engaging in pointless argument is not neutral, it is actively harmful to you. Not because the other person beats you with their words, but because you sacrifice your own inner peace for a battle that cannot be won and produces nothing of value. Seneca wrote, avoid conversations with people who want to argue rather than understand. This is not about running from difficult conversations. It is about protecting your energy and your equanimity for things and people that actually deserve them. I'm not going to argue about this, is the clean, Stoic expression of that boundary. It does not say, you are wrong. It does not say, I am afraid to engage. It says, I have evaluated this situation and determined that this is not how I choose to spend my words or my attention. And that assessment is entirely yours to make. What makes this response so powerful is its combination of clarity and calm. It is not a door slam. It does not invite further reaction. It simply closes a chapter, with your integrity intact, your composure visible, and your self-respect on full display. Marcus Aurelius endured years of political manipulation, social pressure, and personal attack from people who wanted to destabilize him. His consistent response was not to argue more, but to remain more firmly rooted in his values. That rootedness was his reply. And it worked. The philosophy behind the silence that follows. After you have delivered one of these responses, after you have spoken with composure, precision, and genuine Stoic grounding, something interesting happens. There is a silence, and in that silence, the other person must do something they often have no practice doing. Sit with the fact that their provocation did not produce the result they wanted. This silence is not empty. It is weighted. It carries the full gravity of your composure. And it teaches, without a lecture, without a confrontation, something important about who you are and what you are willing to engage with. The Stoics believed that character is best demonstrated not in words, but in action. And choosing, consciously, repeatedly, under genuine pressure, to respond rather than react, to speak from your values rather than your wounds, to protect your dignity without attacking others, is one of the highest forms of action there is. Epictetus said it plainly. We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. These 5 responses are not scripts to be memorized. They are expressions of a philosophical orientation, a way of standing in the world that says, I know who I am, I know what I value. And I will not be moved from that by anyone who has not earned the right to move me. That is what the silence after the right response sounds like. It sounds like power. It sounds like self-mastery. It sounds like a person who has done the internal work and carries that work with them into every room, every conversation, every moment of pressure. How to train yourself to actually use these responses. Reading this and nodding along is one thing. Using these responses in the actual heat of a real confrontation, when your heart is beating faster, when you feel the sting of a cutting remark, when the impulse to lash out or shut down is overwhelming, is an entirely different challenge. And the Stoics knew this. They did not just teach philosophy. They prescribed practice. Marcus Aurelius did not simply believe in Stoic principles. He rehearsed them. Every morning, he wrote in his meditations, reminding himself of how he intended to show up that day, anticipating the difficult people he would encounter, preparing his mind to respond from his values rather than his impulses. This practice is called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. You mentally rehearse difficulty before it arrives, so that when it arrives, you are not meeting it for the first time. For you, this means practice. It means sitting with these responses, not just reading them, and running through real scenarios in your mind. Think of the last time someone provoked you, dismissed you, or tried to drag you into a pointless conflict. Now replay that moment with one of these responses. Feel the difference. Notice how your body responds differently when you have a composed, grounded answer ready instead of a scrambled, emotional reaction. Seneca recommended daily reflection, reviewing the day each evening with honesty and self-compassion. What weakness did I overcome today? Where did I fall short? Where did I find my composure and hold it? This practice, done consistently, builds exactly the kind of self-awareness that makes these responses available to you in the moment, not as rehearsed lines, but as genuine expressions of who you are becoming. The goal is not to become someone who always has the perfect comeback. The goal is to become someone who is so genuinely grounded, so consistently rooted in their own values and self-respect, that composed responses are not an effort. They are simply how you speak. What these replies do to those who witness them. There is another dimension to these responses that is worth examining, one that goes beyond the immediate interaction. Because you rarely argue in private. Most provocations happen in social contexts. Workplaces, families, friend groups, social gatherings, online. And the people around you are watching. They are learning from what they see. When you respond to provocation with composure, you do something remarkable for every person in the room who was waiting to see what you would do. You model a possibility they may have never considered, that it is possible to be challenged and not shattered, confronted and not destabilized, pushed and not knocked over. You demonstrate, in real time, that dignity is not the result of never being attacked. It is the result of choosing how to stand when you are. This is part of what made Marcus Aurelius so effective as a leader. The people around him did not just follow his policies. They were shaped by his behavior under pressure. When he was calm in crisis, he gave others permission to be calm. When he refused to escalate, he created conditions in which de-escalation was possible. Leadership, in the Stoic tradition, is fundamentally about this: living your philosophy so visibly, so consistently, that it becomes contagious. You may not be an emperor, but in every social environment you inhabit, you are a model of something. The question is only, what are you modeling? Every time you choose a composed, intelligent response over a reactive, emotional one, you are modeling Stoic wisdom. And the people around you, whether they say so or not, are taking notes. When not to use these responses? The Stoics were not naive idealists. They lived in the real world, a world of politics, power, war, betrayal, and genuine evil. And they understood that wisdom includes knowing when the usual tools do not apply. There are situations where composed verbal responses are not sufficient, and where more direct, more forceful action is required. These 5 responses are tools for navigating social provocation, manipulation, and low-stakes conflict. They are not designed for situations involving genuine danger, serious injustice, or behavior that requires clear confrontation rather than calm de-escalation. The Stoics were not pacifists. Marcus Aurelius spent years on the battlefield. Cato chose death over submission to tyranny. There is a place for fierce, direct, even uncomfortable action in the Stoic framework. The wisdom is in discernment, the ability to accurately read a situation and choose the response that is genuinely appropriate to it. Epictetus called this the faculty of judgment, and he considered it the most important faculty a human being possesses. More important than intelligence, more important than courage, because without accurate judgment, intelligence becomes cleverness in the service of the wrong goals, and courage becomes recklessness. So use these responses in the situations they are built for: the everyday provocations, the social power plays, the manipulation and dismissal and unnecessary conflict that drain ordinary human life. And trust your judgment to know when something requires more. Conclusion. The most powerful statement you can make. We have covered 5 responses, each one philosophically grounded, practically powerful, and designed not to win arguments but to preserve something far more valuable: your dignity, your composure, and your integrity. Let's bring them together one final time. That says more about you than it does about me, for when someone attacks your character and you choose not to absorb it, I don't need to respond to this, for when you assess something as unworthy of your engagement and act on that assessment, I'll take that into consideration, for when someone overreaches into your domain and you deflect with grace, why does that matter to you? For when you turn the lens back on the provocateur with genuine philosophical curiosity, I'm not going to argue about this, for when you close the door on pointless conflict cleanly and completely. These 5 responses share a common root. They all come from the same place, the place the Stoics called the inner citadel. The sovereign space inside you that no external force can enter without your permission. The place where your values live, where your self-respect is stored, where your composure is generated. Every time you respond from that place instead of from fear, from ego, from the need to be seen as right, you strengthen it. Every time you choose the composed response over the reactive one, you deepen it, and over time, what was once a conscious effort becomes a natural expression of who you are. Marcus Aurelius put it this way: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The provocations, the conflicts, the difficult people in your life, they are not just annoyances to be survived. They are the very practice field on which your Stoic character is built. Every one of them is an opportunity to demonstrate, to yourself and to the world, exactly who you are and what you are made of. And the person who can meet provocation with stillness, meet manipulation with clarity, and meet conflict with composure, that person is not just someone who has learned a few good lines. That person has found something ancient, something real, and something that no one can ever take away. That is Stoicism. That is the power of the composed mind. And that is who you are becoming. If these 5 responses gave you something real, a new tool, a new way of seeing conflict, a deeper understanding of what Stoic philosophy actually looks like in everyday life, then you are exactly who this channel is built for. Subscribe right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. We release new Stoic content regularly, and every single video is built to make you sharper, stronger, and more grounded in how you live and communicate. This community is growing, and it is growing because people like you are choosing depth over distraction. Hit subscribe, stay with us, and let's keep going. Stoicism, Stoic wisdom, Stoic lessons, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, self-mastery, communication, confidence, personal growth.